A kind of a disclaimer. As a Russian person, you're not supposed to make a video such as this one. Rather, as a patriot of your country and its worthy citizen, you're supposed to assert that everything that has to do with your country is great, especially when talking about it to non-Russian speakers. But I believe that truth is more important than a good impression. Also, ignoring problems and pretending they don't exist only leads to stagnation and a lack of progress. This is why this video has been made. In fact, I will try to make a series of similar videos if I can. Of course, first of all, what's considered beautiful or even just attractive and what isn't can be very subjective, and such expressions as the most beautiful are especially debatable. The proper title of this video should read something like, Why so many people consider Russian and Eastern European women to be among the most attractive women, or something to that effect. But YouTube would not allow me such a long title, so please be understanding. Anyway, let's get started. There are many proposed, sweet-sounding, almost romanticized explanations as to why Russian and other Eastern European women tend to be attractive, well put together, in good physical shape, well-groomed, well-dressed, etc. Some common ones among these explanations include Russian women respect their health and take care of their bodies, or Russian women have not been exposed to the toxic Western feminism, or Russian women have traditional values, another very contestable stereotype, by the way, which could be the topic of another video. These theories sound more like wishful thinking, or even as a marketing ploy of agencies trying to push mail order brides to Western customers. The real answer to why Russian women generally tend to be more attractive than their Western counterparts is social pressure. Actually, there is an enormous, huge societal pressure that is put on women to be attractive in Russia and in other Eastern European countries, like Belarus and Ukraine, for example. This idea that if you're a woman, you have to do everything in your power to look attractive, like walk around in mini skirts and 6-inch stiletto heels, even in winter on black ice, starve yourself with diets if you weigh more than 135 pounds, always wear makeup, is forced on you since a very early age. I mean, by the time you're 13 and 14 years old, I distinctly remember how I was severely bullied and called ugly by other girls simply because I refused to wear miniskirts and high heels and didn't wear makeup everywhere at age 14. Most of the girls at that age were already wearing lots of makeup, high heels, and I also remember some of them would wear these short winter jackets that basically exposed their waist even when it was 20 below zero outside. But especially these sky-high 5 or 6-inch stiletto heels on slippery icy sidewalks, and we didn't even have salt sprinkled on every sidewalk to melt the ice and make it less slippery. I mean, what kind of self-respect and especially care for one's body and health can one even talk about here? All my female friends would take at least an hour to get ready, no matter where they went, and most of this getting ready time was dedicated to doing one's hair and makeup just right. However, it seemed that no matter what they did, most of them still felt very insecure and would spend a lot of their time and energy trying to bring down other women for how they look. For example, we lived in a rather small town, and there was, and still is, this main street there, with benches along both sides of it. So we would sit in one of these benches, and men and women would pass us by, and my female friends would dissect every detail in the appearance of these women who passed us. In a negative way, of course, like the fact that her bag doesn't match her shoes, or that you're not supposed to wear this kind of shoes with this type of pants, and when I would suggest that maybe we too should take a walk, they would usually refuse because, like I said, there was a whole bunch of benches along the street and other girls and women were sitting on them as well. And so my female friends would explain they wouldn't want to walk back and forth because all these other girls and women would then also watch them and talk about them, their appearance, and what they're wearing. To me, even then, that sounded pretty odd, and that kind of thing still went on even when I would go back to Russia at an older age, like at 18, or in my early 20s even. So when I say enormous, even crazy societal pressure in the Russian society to take care of one's appearance as a woman, I mean just that. It's crazy. Another strange, small but telling detail that comes to mind is that I noticed during my trips to Russia in the summer that many young women there, even in their late teens and early 20s, would not wear short shorts or short skirts even when it was very hot outside. And at least where we lived, in the continental climate, it does get very hot in the summer. Most of these girls and young women, who were incidentally mostly in good shape or even rather skinny, would wear their high stiletto heels, of course, but would still wear long jeans all the time, no matter how hot it got. Whereas in Canada, for example, as we all know, most girls and young women have no problem wearing short shorts as soon as the weather gets warm. I kind of wondered about that at first, even attributed this to modesty, although that explanation didn't really fit with all the other things that I knew, or even just with the fact that short skirts and dresses are worn by these women in other, less appropriate weather conditions and seasons. The real answer to why that was came up unexpectedly as I listened to two Russian women exchanging opinions on Western European women. They said something like, "And you know what surprised me in Western Europe? Women there wear short shorts, even though they have cellulite." Cellulite. The unevenness of the skin due to the underlying fat tissue, something that 99% of women have, no matter how skinny they are, and something that is absolutely normal. So they continued, "I can't believe how confident these Western women are to wear short shorts like that, even when they have cellulite, or aren't even skinny at all. Wow, some of them are even overweight, and they still wear short shorts and aren't even ashamed or embarrassed. I even considered wearing short shorts myself," one of them said. To which I almost felt like saying, well, sometimes people wear short shorts because it is actually hot outside, not just to demonstrate that they have perfect legs with no cellulite. But yes, there was my answer as to why so many women in Russia, even with perfectly normal body weight, are still embarrassed to wear short shorts and short dresses in summer. That's because they're afraid that others would judge them if they see any hint of cellulite on their legs, and especially if, in addition to that, their legs are not slim. You may ask, so what about that part where you mentioned about these women not being embarrassed to wear miniskirts and short dresses when it's not hot outside? Does their cellulite magically disappear then? No, it doesn't. But in every other season and weather, except when it is very hot, Russian women often wear these extra thin, skin colored tights, whose only purpose, really, is to conceal any unevenness of the skin on your legs. But you can't wear these with open sandals and especially flip flops because, first, you need to wedge flip flops between your toes, and of course, tights cover your toes the same way that socks do. And second, more importantly, it is considered bad taste, everywhere in general, not just in Russia, to wear any kind of tights with open-toed summer shoes and sandals, and Russian women, being uptight and judgmental about style and fashion the way that they are, cannot allow themselves or others to do that. If one of them does it, then other women, or even men too, won't have that, and will certainly point it out. In fact, I remember as a 12-year-old, or around that age, I once put on socks and sandals and went for a walk, and there were older girls sitting at the entrance to my building, and they immediately commented, "Girl, are you dumb? You're not supposed to wear socks with sandals." Oh, but these thin, skin-colored tights, though. How could I have forgotten about that part? Most Canadian girls and young women don't even know about these, much less wear them everywhere. Actually, that was a big surprise for me initially because women wear them all the time in Russia. But good for them, for Western women, for not bothering to wear these. For one thing, these tights are so thin they tear and run literally all the time, which in reality is nothing dramatic. You just get a thin streak along your leg, not very noticeable, especially seeing how these tights are skin-colored in the first place. But for a Russian woman, it is often an absolute catastrophe whenever they notice a run on their leg. They will then themselves run home in shame, and many even carry an extra pair of these tights everywhere with them in a bag to be able to change ASAP should they notice a run. Honestly, the level of embarrassment about such a trivial thing as a run on one's tights that most Russian women experience is almost comparable to that of, I don't know, peeing oneself by Western standards. Okay, so the reason I spent so much time with this very specific example of tights and runs is to highlight the obsession with looking flawless among women in a Russian and Eastern European society, and the intense guilt and shame that these women experience whenever something in a way that they look is less than perfect. I can give you any number of small details that Russian women seem to obsess about, that most Western women seem to be either totally oblivious of or to barely notice, like letting your hair roots grow a bit too long. Well, that part may have changed now that it's actually fashionable to have slightly longer dark roots if you have blonde hair, but only for that reason. Other things, like having a chip in your nail polish, having any brassy yellowish tint to your bleach blonde hair, not to mention an obsession with luxury brands one can barely afford, and then trying to determine who else has an authentic brand item, like a garment, a bag, or shoes, and who has a cheap counterfeit version. And there are many of these counterfeit items sold in Russia. But going back to the subject of body weight, yes, when I strained my memory a little, I did remember that in Russia, even as a child, I would hear comments of adults about women who were not in a good shape but dared to wear short shorts and dresses, or even just something that was too tight. Despite that, they said that such women were disrespectful and inconsiderate of others, because who wants to look at their exposed fat legs and arms or at their fat folds through clothes that are too tight for them? Such women shouldn't upset other people by forcing them to look at their unappealing body when they expose it for everyone to see, or wear clothes that isn't loose enough. And some among these people wouldn't even hesitate to openly point this out to such women. It may or may not sound surprising to you, but this is basically the view still held by the majority of people in these countries. If you're not slim, it is disrespectful towards other people to wear anything that exposes too much skin. In fact, I remember during one of my trips to Russia, when I weighed around 140 pounds, me and my friends went to a cafe, and there were two older men, themselves overweight, with beer bellies, and they said, looking at me, "Well, in our town, girls are a bit skinnier than that." You see, in Russia, men, unlike women, seem to be totally exempt from any requirements towards their own appearance, so you will often see this bizarre thing where a very below-average looking man will judge a woman's looks so harshly it is as if he himself was a male supermodel. Now I hope it is becoming clear where this concern with thinness and great care not to gain weight is coming from in Russian women, especially in younger ones, and that the fact that Russian women are generally thinner than their Western counterparts has very little to do with genuine care for one's health and respect for one's body, or things like genetics even, and has everything to do with shame and social pressure. And women themselves are oftentimes much more aggressive in putting down and picking apart other women than even men are. I always feel like telling these women, and sometimes I do, don't you realize that if you judge other women so harshly for any flaws in how they look, then you will also be, and actually already are, forced to live up to the same standards? And you may be pretty and skinny now, but what makes you so sure it will be the case forever? So, a very short, non-romanticized, non-glamorous answer to why Russian and Eastern European women tend to be more attractive is that if you're a woman in Russia or in another Eastern European country, you basically have no choice. You either do your best to conform and, like all other women, put on your high heels and makeup everywhere, or be openly judged and ridiculed. And Russia, or Ukraine, or Belarus, not being the politest places on earth, this ridicule and criticism for not conforming to societal expectations will often be delivered openly and very harshly without much regard for your feelings. In fact, I remember as a 13-year-old, when I went to a summer camp, first of all, I was bullied by other girls for not wearing makeup, but when these girls saw that my mom, when she visited me, was also not wearing any makeup, they began to endlessly harass me about having an ugly mother. Like, "Now we know why you're so ugly. It is no wonder when you have such a mother." You see, not wearing makeup at 13 in Russia is strange enough, but when a grown woman doesn't wear any makeup, that is something absolutely wild and outrageous in that society. The supervisors, too, did not even stand up for me, though they saw exactly what was happening. The reason I even mention this is to demonstrate that in Russia, if you do not live to the societal expectations, you will be made aware of that very openly and very harshly and nonstop. Social pressure in Russia and social pressure in some other countries are completely different things sometimes, at least in its intensity. But I get why so many people, including Russian women themselves, buy into this myth that Russian women are somehow, in and of themselves, more attractive than Western women, as in having more attractive facial features, being genetically less predisposed to weight gain, etc. I even bought into this myth myself for a while. Believe it or not, after having lived in North America for a few years before going back to visit Russia for the first time since I left, I almost started to imagine that Russia is full of these supermodel looking women. In other words, I've myself internalized that stereotype. And yes, if you go to a big city and only walk the main streets there, you will see an above average number of good looking women. But as we have seen, to go for a walk on a main street of any city or even town is no small deal for many Russian women. So once you turn the corner into smaller streets and into backyards, then all of a sudden, most of these beautiful women are almost nowhere to be seen. And let's be honest. If you randomly sample women from Russia or Ukraine or Belarus and from any Western country, if you wash away all their makeup, put both groups in identical plain clothes and compare them that way, without any artificial embellishments, there won't be that big of a difference between the two groups, appearance-wise. Although, like I mentioned before, in general at least younger women in Russia tend to be thinner. I was actually quite disappointed when I discovered, or I think I should probably say rediscovered, just that. For a while, I myself started to imagine that Russian women on average had much better looking faces, for example, but when I actually came back there for a visit, I was surprised and disappointed when I saw that there really weren't that many genuinely beautiful faces around. Not much more of them than I saw in Canada. But I mean, I should have known that, of course. For example, when I went to school in Russia, how many genuinely beautiful girls without all the makeup were there in a classroom? Maybe one or two out of like 15 or 20 even. And I'm not trying to be harsh, just objective and realistic. But I know any Russian or Eastern European woman, if she watches this video, will still hate me for this video. Okay, so thus far, we've only covered this one aspect of the big subject of Russia and Russian women and Eastern European women. And there is so much more to discuss. For example, what about the stereotype that Russian and Eastern European women tend to be gold diggers? Is there some truth to that? Are Russian women really into traditional values? Or how traditional is Russian society, really, when it comes to gender roles? The answer to this one is more complicated than you might think. All in all, lots of things to talk about. So please let me know in the comments below how you like this video so that I know if I should continue with this topic. But for now, thank you for watching and see you in the next one.